It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the call came in. Mary, one of my longtime patients, had collapsed in her kitchen. Her husband found her on the floor, her face slack on one side, her speech garbled. By the time the ambulance arrived, she couldn't speak at all. Her right arm hung motionless by her side. In the emergency room, as I reviewed the scans and examined her, it became clear. Mary had suffered a stroke. The damage had begun before she even hit the floor. Minutes had passed, then hours. Her brain, once vibrant and sharp, was now under siege. And all because the signs had been missed. In the days that followed, her family was consumed by guilt. They asked again and again, was there something we should have seen? That question lingers. And they're not alone. I've heard it from dozens of families over the years. People who didn't know what to look for. People who thought their loved one was just tired or having a bad day. People who waited just a little too long. The truth is, stroke doesn't always start with drama. It starts in silence. A droop of the mouth, a stuttered sentence, a glass slipping from the hand. Small signs until they aren't. And that's what makes my work both heartbreaking and urgent. Because I know, from experience, that every minute matters. Every second we wait, brain cells die. And the difference between a full recovery and a lifetime of struggle can come down to whether someone recognized the signs and called for help. I've been treating stroke patients for over 15 years. And if there's one message I wish I could shout from every rooftop, it's this. You have more power than you think. In this episode, I'm not just giving you medical facts. I'm sharing stories, real, human stories from my own patients. Because stroke awareness is not about fear. It's about empowerment. It's about knowing what to do when the moment comes. And trust me, that moment will come for someone you love. So, stay with me. And if this message speaks to you, if you want to be part of a movement that saves lives, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to the channel. We're here to educate, to equip, and to stand by you in every step of this journey. Let's begin. Not as a list from a textbook, but through real stories from my practice. Because stroke awareness isn't just knowledge, it's power. Let me take you behind the scenes of what actually happens inside the body during a stroke. Because understanding the mechanism helps us recognize why time is so critical and why even subtle symptoms should never be ignored. A stroke occurs when blood flow to a part of the brain is interrupted. This happens in two main ways. In an ischemic stroke, a clot blocks a blood vessel in the brain, cutting off oxygen supply. This is the most common type. About 87% of strokes fall into this category. In a hemorrhagic stroke, a weakened blood vessel bursts, causing bleeding into the brain. Though less common, it tends to be more severe. The brain depends on a constant flow of oxygen-rich blood to function. Without it, brain cells begin to die within minutes. Unlike muscles or skin, the brain doesn't regenerate easily. Damage is often permanent. Different areas of the brain control different functions: speech, movement, memory, even personality. That's why the symptoms vary so widely. A stroke in the left hemisphere may cause speech issues. A stroke in the cerebellum may affect balance. But in every case, the clock is ticking. There's a phrase we use often in neurology. Time is brain. Every minute a stroke goes untreated, the brain loses nearly 2 million neurons. That's why stroke is one of the few medical emergencies where the exact time of symptom onset matters more than almost anything else. But here's the hard part. Stroke symptoms don't always feel like an emergency. They can come on quietly. A tingling hand, a slurred word, a moment of confusion. And because there's no pain, people often wait. That delay is what hurts us most. Stroke doesn't give second chances. So in this episode, we're going to make sure you know the signs before it's too late. Next, I'll share a real case that illustrates exactly how fast things can go wrong and what difference early action can make. Let me tell you about Carlos. Carlos was a 62-year-old retired electrician, still sharp, still strong, a man who took pride in fixing everything around the house. He was watching television one afternoon when his wife noticed something strange. His face looked uneven. One corner of his mouth drooped slightly. When she asked a simple question, he stared blankly. She thought maybe he hadn't heard her. Maybe he was tired. Then he dropped his coffee mug. Right from his hand, no reaction, no attempt to catch it. She rushed over and asked, "Carlos, what's wrong?" He tried to answer, but the words came out jumbled, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't fit. That's when she hesitated. Should she call 911? Or wait a few minutes and see if it passed? She waited. Carlos waved her off, still convinced it was just fatigue. But 45 minutes later, he was in the ER, and the scan confirmed a major ischemic stroke. The part of his brain that controls speech and motor function was already damaged. Carlos lived, but he didn't walk again without help. And he never spoke the same way again. His wife later told me through tears, "I thought I had more time." That's the cruel part of stroke. It tricks you into thinking you have time. It disguises itself as something minor. But what's really happening is a silent emergency, unfolding every second. And that's why we must act at the very first sign. So, what should you be looking for? Here are the 5 most urgent signs I teach every patient and every family member to recognize, because they are the most common, the most dangerous, and the most often missed. 1. Sudden numbness or weakness, especially on one side of the body. You may see someone suddenly unable to move an arm, drag a leg, or smile evenly. Ask them to raise both arms. If one drifts downward, that's a red flag. This isn't fatigue. It's a signal from the brain that something's gone terribly wrong. 2. Sudden confusion, trouble speaking, or understanding. Imagine someone mid-conversation, and suddenly they're speaking gibberish, can't find words, or can't follow a simple instruction. I've had patients who simply stared when asked their name or slurred so badly their family thought they were drunk. If speech falters, take it seriously. 3. Sudden vision changes, blurred vision, double vision, a sudden loss of sight in one eye. These are stroke signs, too, but they often get ignored. I once treated a woman who thought her blurry eye was due to stress. It was a TIAA warning stroke. Fortunately, she came in just in time. 4. Sudden difficulty walking, dizziness, or loss of balance. If someone becomes unsteady, feels off balance, or can't walk without veering, don't assume it's dehydration or just getting older. It might be the cerebellum, the brain's balance center, crying out for help. 5. Sudden severe headache with no known cause. This is especially important in hemorrhagic strokes. If someone suddenly grips their head and says it's the worst headache of their life, don't wait. Call emergency services immediately. To help people remember these signs quickly, we use the acronym FAST. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911. Every second counts. The sooner someone gets treatment, the better their chance of survival and recovery. Recognizing these signs is the single most powerful thing you can do. Teach them to your family. Write them on a note and keep it on the fridge. Because knowing them might just save the person you love most. Over the years, I've noticed some patterns, mistakes that repeat across patients and families. And these mistakes, while understandable, can cost lives. The first mistake is waiting. Waiting to see if symptoms pass. Waiting until someone insists on help. People fear overreacting or bothering others, but stroke doesn't wait. Every minute you delay, the brain loses more ground. The safest move is always to act immediately. The second mistake is driving to the hospital instead of calling 911. EMS teams are trained to spot stroke signs on the way and alert the ER in advance. That alone can shave precious minutes off treatment. I've seen too many patients lose time in traffic or waiting in the ER queue. Third, people ignore symptoms that go away. These are often transient ischemic attacks or mini-strokes. They're your brain's warning shot. And ignoring them is like hearing a smoke alarm and going back to sleep. It's not over, it's only just begun. Fourth, some assume strokes can't happen to healthy people. I once treated a marathon runner who dismissed his numb arm for too long. Stroke doesn't care about your fitness, your age, or your cholesterol score alone. It cares about blood vessels, blood flow, and time. Finally, people often try to rationalize strange behavior. They say, "He's just tired," or "She's been under stress." But if something feels off, it probably is. Trust your gut. I always tell families, it's better to overreact than overlook. Mistakes are human, but when it comes to stroke, awareness isn't just helpful, it's life-saving. Recovery after a stroke is never a straight line. It's a winding road filled with frustration, small wins, setbacks, and unexpected moments of hope. Let's return to Mary for a moment. Because her husband recognized the signs quickly, we were able to give her a clot-busting medication called TPA within the golden window. Within hours, her speech began to return. Within days, her mobility improved. 6 months later, she was walking unassisted, reading bedtime stories to her grandchildren, and even joining a local stroke survivor support group. She told me, "I got a second chance, and I won't waste it." Carlos, on the other hand, had a more difficult path. The delay in recognizing his symptoms meant that critical areas of his brain had already suffered irreversible damage. Rehab was long. Speech therapy took months. He had to relearn how to perform the most basic tasks, brushing his teeth, tying his shoes, forming full sentences. But I watched him show up to therapy, day after day, with determination. And with time, he began to rebuild not only his strength but also his confidence. His progress may have been slower, but it was no less heroic. What separates these two outcomes isn't just luck. It's timing. It's knowledge. It's the ability of someone, maybe you, to recognize the signs early and act without hesitation. Recovery doesn't just mean surviving. It means reclaiming your life, your dignity, your independence. And it starts with fast intervention, followed by comprehensive support, physical therapy, speech therapy, mental health care, and yes, nutrition and lifestyle changes. If you or someone you love has suffered a stroke, know this: you are not alone. There is a community, a plan, and a way forward. But it begins with awareness and continues with action. Every single day. And for those who haven't experienced a stroke, let this be your wake-up call. Learn the signs. Know your numbers. Make lifestyle changes before it's too late. Because while we can't undo the past, we can absolutely shape the future. If you've made it to the end of this episode, I hope you remember this. You can be the reason someone lives. You don't need a medical degree to save a life. You need awareness, attention, and the courage to act. Learn the signs. Teach them to your family. Practice the FAST test. Program emergency numbers into your phone. Because one day, someone you love may need you to recognize the moment, to speak up, to dial that number, to refuse to wait. And when that day comes, you'll be ready. See you in the next episode. We're just getting started.